Welcome to a diary of a September day of our lives in West Yorkshire, UK. On Thursday, I walked the kids up through the forest on their way to school and navigated this little piece of land that's in between the river and a waterfall. Sometimes it's quite dry, but on this day it was overflowing and we managed to make our way across the stones with very sturdy shoes. That's one of the most tricky things I find about parenting, is finding the right shoes that are dry enough and comfortable and will possibly fit them for more than 6 months. So it's nice though, because it always feels like a bit of an adventure. And after dropping them off, I make my way down the hill with a branch that I've generally found on my way, and drop it off either at home or at the studio and make my way to town because it's also market day. And at the market we can get veg. There's the place that sells matches and cleaning products and absolutely everything that you could possibly want, as well as the cheese stall, the all-important cheese stall, and the wonderful fish stall where we take our Tupperware and sometimes get some mackerel or mussels. There's also, next to the cheese stall, the veg stall, which is where we get most of our fruit and vegetables, and then the bread stall where I pick up some cinnamon buns. We make our own bread at home, but the cinnamon buns from the bakehouse are incomparable. Then walk through the very lovely square on the sunny day. It just looks completely perfect with that strange statue in the middle, which is also a sundial. Cross over the bridge and the river. That's Hebden Bridge, I think, in the distance, and then into the town hall where we can get free compost bags, which always makes me feel weirdly excited. On the way back home, I stop into some charity shops as we're keeping an eye out for some shelves and a sofa and a little coffee table as well for the living room. Peruse the books, always loads of mirrors, and then upstairs there's the clothing where I found some really good bargains like coats and winter dresses. Make my way around there, try and avoid some of the things that I really want to take home, like that pink jug, but it was £15, which just seems like a little bit too much from a charity shop, but it is so beautiful and it's probably worth more because it looks like it's Art Deco. But yeah, they've always got really lovely things in this one. It's Overgate if you're ever making your way to Hebden Bridge to have a look around the charity shops. There is plenty to be found around here. Then back home to what feels like another charity shop full of all of my things, especially as this week I've decided to do a bit of an autumn clean and just pull everything out and have a dust, a wipe down, a scrub. I always kind of feel like autumn is similar to spring in that it's a shift in the seasons and it feels like the right time to pull everything out, rejig things, put away crockery that we might have used in the summer months more with brighter colours, and bring out pieces that we might use more in the winter months. And because we're spending longer days indoors and just more time at home because of the weather, it makes sense to clean everything and make it feel nice and cozy so that we're going to want to spend time here, and pull out books that are always more exciting to read as we start making more soups and stews and just being a bit more domestic after the kind of wilderness of summer. So it felt really good to pull everything out and assess again what we want to keep, a few things that we want to let go of, and some things that we've even forgotten about. You know, that's the great thing about having most things on view, is that you remember all the things that you've got, but even then, you know, some things do get forgotten. So it feels quite cathartic. And then to put it all back together, and especially on a sunny day, see it at its best, is just the best feeling. So that was the kitchen. I've since done upstairs, the living room, the bedrooms, the bathroom, and feel like I can actually relax, because all of that effort and energy goes into what's actually quite physical, cleaning an entire house. And then you can just kind of sit back and relax for a little bit until it's time to clean and dust again. The mantelpiece feels like it's not had much attention lately. It needs some candles lit, I think, to add to the dripping wax, and some autumn winter foliage soon, as it's looking slightly bare. But that's pretty much how it's looking at the moment, kind of clear and tidy. We're having to get a new kettle because that one's eroded, but otherwise this is how it will pretty much look for the rest of winter. Oh, and some lovely apples as well that our neighbour offered us from their apple tree, and that's been lovely to make some apple crumble hopefully today once the kids get back home. And then after I did that, I went to the studio, which I now look at as well, and looks like it's kind of like just piles and piles of stuff as I'm bringing blankets out, because it's quite cold in there, so I'm having to bring out different blankets for different days, ones to go around my shoulders, ones to go on my lap, ones which I don't mind getting ink on. So all of those kind of logistics that come into just being in a very cold, damp valley without any heating in my studio. But it's been really lovely spending time in there this week, because the light has just been so beautiful, and it makes all the difference to when I'm painting. And I've found some new musical sheets to work on in the charity shop recently as well, so I'm excited about getting started on these. I'm going to be doing, I'm hoping to do a collection of around 30 over the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to be using more pieces with writing on them instead of musicals sheets with the notes on them. So I've been choosing which sheets to use, which ones work with ink, because they don't all work with nibs and ink, because some are too textured and some are too smooth. So it takes a lot of kind of siphoning through lots of different books and just picking out maybe 1 or 2 pages from each one. But it then means that I've got a beautiful collection of old musical books. So that's been a really lovely part of it. I do enjoy all the different stages of creating these pieces, because it's not just approaching it to draw, it's about using an object that's existed for a very long time and has a very different purpose. And honouring it, I suppose, honouring it and seeing how I can work with the shapes that are already on the page, and looking for the balance within that, and how I can honour that with the type of fruit that I choose to draw on it. So I've got a list of things like gooseberries, rose hips, figs, pears, apples, and we'll see what comes out, but it's been really lovely just experimenting and playing around. And now I will leave you just with a few little thoughts from this week. I've been thinking a lot about, sorry, let me just get a pomegranate, about our kids lately, and about what it is that we would hope for them or want for them, because I feel like my expectations have really shifted, of not of myself as a parent, but I think what matters, I think, to them, and just kind of taking into consideration the planet and global shifts and patterns, and looking ahead at their future and what it might be like for them. Because I think for a really long time I felt quite uncomfortable about the fact that our kids have only really known one place. Griffin was born in Manchester, and then when he was 1, we moved here to West Yorkshire. Elwyn was born here in the kitchen in our house, and this is where they've lived. And then until a couple of months ago, they'd never left the UK. Griffin once when he was 6 months old, but he doesn't remember that. Other than that, we've always had holidays within the UK, and I think my concern about that was mainly that they have lived in a bubble and haven't really been exposed to different cultures and different situations where they're not the norm in a way. You know, we live in a very, very white, very British, although it's quite a liberal town. It's quite, there's a lot of kind of like-minded people from similar-ish backgrounds, especially like within the circles that we socialise. And I guess because I grew up between different places, so I was born in London, and then when I was very young, probably about 2, we moved to the south of France. We lived in a caravan in a field for a bit, and then we lived on a couple of farms, and we moved back to the UK just for family stuff. My mum was a single mum. I went to live in Scotland with my grandmother. Then I lived in London for a couple of years with my mum again and her partner. And then when I was 8, we moved to Spain. And I lived there till I was 18 and moved back to the UK. And there was quite a lot of movement there. And
even though it was quite uncomfortable as a child, it really taught me a lot of resilience, and I developed an ability to adapt really in situations, and to observe situations, and to, I guess, a lot of the time feel other, and to not just take it for granted that when I walked into a room, I knew what to expect, and I remember that I learnt French and Spanish and Catalan, and experienced other cultures, and it's European, so it's really, it wasn't that huge a shift, but there's definitely a lot of things about it that I felt really sad that my kids haven't experienced that in a way, because I think however much when I was a kid I just wanted to be in one place, I now, looking back, realise how valuable it was for them, that my mum had the courage really to do that, to just get up and move our life, and trusted that we would find something there, and we did, and it was really, really wonderful. And although, like, for example, my heritage is Scottish and Welsh. My mum was born in South Africa, but her family's Scottish. My dad's very Welsh. I feel that I have layers to my identity culturally through having lived in different places during my formative years. So all of this has kind of been going on in my mind for a long time, and I've really felt like, God, I didn't expect to be bringing up two Yorkshire boys, and so that's been quite an adjustment. And I guess I felt a lot of guilt. I felt quite guilty that their world has been quite small, I suppose, that they've not had that chance to experience the world on a big level. And the reasons that we've generally done it has mainly been financially. I think it's been a combination of knowing that it would be very expensive to take all of us as a family to go away on holiday somewhere outside of the UK, and a very high chance that the kids really wouldn't enjoy it. And especially, like, one of our kids, he has quite heightened sensory sensitivities, and throw in there a pandemic and some lockdowns, and I think we just kind of found ourselves in a situation where we're just like, no, we're just staying here. And I feel like we're only just starting to come out of that fog, and we're planning on spending a bit more time in France this winter. But yeah, it's been interesting kind of looking back, and now that they're a bit older, they're 6 and 9, and yes, they haven't had exposure to other cultures as much, and they have lived in a bit of a bubble, but what a beautiful, lucky bubble they have had. We live in a place where nature is on our doorstep. It's quite idyllic in many ways. I mean, the winters are long and they are grueling, but we walk through the fields and the forest every day to and from school, because of the nature of our work. A lot of the time, we are at home a lot, and that's an incredible privilege to have. It also means that financially we're often, we're not as abundant occasionally as it could be, but at the same time we're very present with the kids, and they're experiencing also, a relationship with John that they possibly wouldn't have if he was working in Manchester all the time, like the fact that he's made it part-time, so he spends a lot of time with them here. So the relationship with us both is quite equal. And I guess I'm just feeling more and more like when I was growing up in the 80s and the 90s, global travel, global experiences felt like that's what you wanted to do. That was kind of the aim and the goal, or at least within, like, the people that I spoke to. Whereas as things are shifting so fast, and environmentally, politically, it feels even more and more important to be focusing on the community within which we find ourselves. And maybe that's what's important. Maybe that's something that, that I've really taken for granted and overlooked with them, that is something really precious and of value for them, is that they feel very safe within their community. They feel connected to their community. And who knows where the world will be in 10 years' time when they maybe start travelling on their own. And of course I feel sad. I feel sad that they won't experience the world without smartphones, travelling without having a smartphone or the internet. It's a whole other experience that they will never have. But I also need to just completely let go of my idea, my nostalgia and my idea of what I think it should be, because they're going to have their own experiences and we just have no idea what the world's going to look like. And in terms of schooling, I'm coming more and more around to the idea that what I think they need to be learning is creative thinking and independent thinking, entrepreneurial skills, flexibility, adaptability, because again, we just have no idea what lies ahead in terms of the future. And certain generations were told, well, if you go to university and you get a degree, then you'll get a good job, and we all realised that's not the truth. Maybe it was for a while, but then that no longer happened. And the world is changing, and the economy is changing, and the way, with AI and everything, certain jobs are redundant. So a lot of what I feel that is still kind of prioritized in education, I think it's taking a long time to catch up, isn't it, really, because it's just happening so fast. And so what I really want to encourage in them is that creative thinking. And it's not at all belittling what they're learning at school. That's, of course, incredibly valuable. And finding a great teacher is, it can really mark you for life. It can form you for life when somebody fills you with inspiration. But I just think there's certain things within the curriculum that possibly aren't prioritised. There's less funding put in place for arts and creative areas, whereas I actually think that is really fundamentally important for navigating the world and being open to what the future holds. So yes, I've just been thinking a lot about that, really, and about how much those are my priorities, are nature for them, and creative thinking and creative practice, and I guess, and understanding the value of relationships. How if you work on relationships as well, and communication skills, and learn empathy and compassion, that can really go a long way in whatever it is that you do, whatever path you choose, unless it's maybe coding at home, I don't know that. But I think that's really, really important. So yeah, I don't know, I feel like I beat myself up for a long time about what I thought their childhood should be looking at, or what I thought I was failing at, and now I feel like I've kind of simplified it, really, is because when I look back to my childhood, what I remember is nature, and I feel like that kind of really that almost became like a subconscious need, and it's meant that as I've grown older, I've sought out nature wherever I go, and I find great solace and support in nature when I'm struggling with things, or when I'm rejoicing things. That's often where I turn to, is go out into nature, be close to some trees or a river, and just be in the company of nature, and I feel very held. So, the fact that we live somewhere where they can experience that feels really important. I would really love, at some point, I would love for us to move to a place where we have a garden so that they can learn about growing. I think that's really important, if they can learn about how growing and being independent. This might all sound very idyllic, but I'm not saying take them out of society. I'm just saying, like, those really simple core things are actually what we always come back to, really. They're the fundamentals of living on this planet, removing the computers, removing the internet, removing all of this other man-made stuff. It's us and the earth, isn't it? So yeah, I guess those are just some musings and some thoughts on raising a child in 2025 in a world that sometimes feels like it's burning, and with a future that is always uncertain but seems to be shifting very quickly. And our kids are little, and I want to teach them how to be present and how to think for themselves and how to question things, and for them to decide what it is that matters to them really, and why does it matter to them. So yeah, those are my weekly thoughts. Thanks for listening.
So there we have a diary of a September day, to some of the things that I got up to before going back up to get the kids from school through the very, very beautiful woods. I feel incredibly lucky. I think that's what I really want to kind of reconfirm, is that I really am aware just how lucky we are to live in such safety and amidst such beauty. And however many things that I might feel frustrated with or would sometimes like to be different, we are so incredibly fortunate, and I never, ever, ever take it for granted. So thank you so much for being here, for watching, and I will see you next week.
Boink.